generally want to begin by saying how pleased I am to be here. And I say this on advisement, really, because you have to start every presentation by saying how pleased you are to be there, you know. And honestly, mostly you're not, frankly. You know, really, I'd just rather be somewhere else, frankly. But but I actually am rather pleased to be here because, well, firstly, I think that a lot of things that I'm concerned about and interested in are exemplified by the work that I've seen going on here at Full Sail. Without imagination, nothing in human culture would ever have taken place. We would still be in caves. Would probably still be some kind of protozoic slime. Were it not for imagination, everything that we have come to take for granted would still be dormant in the great capacities of humanity. And I believe that for the future, we have to focus systematically on developing imagination as a strategic priority in our education systems from kindergarten right the way through up to higher education. And the great problem, I believe, is that we're going in the opposite direction in most of our institutions. It's what I applaud so much about what's happening here at Full Sail, that you get this. Public education does not get it, or rather the architects of public education seem not to get it. I moved to America 7 years ago with my family, and we put our kids into school, and they ended up doing a very similar curriculum to the one that they were doing in Britain. I should have said that, by the way. I'm not from America. Should I? There was a really interesting similarity in the education systems in Britain and in America. The same hierarchy of subjects. You know what it is. You know, math and science at the top and humanities a bit further down, and then the arts at the bottom. Now, this isn't about the arts. I don't mean to say that. But there's a hierarchy. I'd put money on the fact that most of you, when you're at school, were steered away from things that you liked doing towards things that other people thought it would be better if you were to do that. If you think of it, the whole school curriculum that you've passed through is divided into two sorts of disciplines: useful ones and useless ones. And the useful ones are thought to be languages, math and science, and the useless ones are the arts and humanities. Isn't that correct? Typically, that's the way it's seen. We, I believe, most of us, went through a system of education where there was a clear hierarchy of subjects. Some are thought to be more important than the others, and they were then divided internally in terms of their assumed character. You know, that some subjects were all hard and objective and full of evidence and teased your brain, and others were about expressing yourself and being, you know, more feeling and being in touch with yourself, and there were softer activities. Now, these ideologies in education, I believe, are squandering the talents of most people who pass through it. It's squandering the talents of kids whose interests lie in these fields which are so neglected. And it's also squandering the creative capacities of people whose real interests are in the very areas that are being characterized as being just objective or just methodical. Some of those creative people I know are technologists and scientists and mathematicians. Some of the most disciplined people I know are dancers and writers and musicians. But we have lived with these stereotypes. Education and our lives as human beings are not linear. That's an industrial idea, you know, that you start there and you get there. You know, our lives, if they're anything, are cyclical and kind of recursive. You know, that there are moments of growth. There are seasons of personal growth and development and seasons that are fallow. And it's not over until it's actually over. And that, you know, the very old, you know, like the very young, still have enormous amounts to find out about themselves if the conditions are right. And I feel it's the great role of a teacher. You know, when I was saying moving to a different metaphor, an organic metaphor, I think it's going from an industrial metaphor to back to an agricultural one. Because if you think of it, you know, a great gardener, great farmer, depends upon plants growing under their care. Otherwise, they're out of business. But the irony is that every farmer and gardener knows that you cannot make a plant grow. You cannot do that. You know, I mean, you don't stick the roots on and paint the petals and attach the leaves. You know, the plant grows itself. What you do is provide the conditions for growth. And great farmers know what the conditions are and bad ones don't. Great teachers know what the conditions of growth are and bad ones don't. And with bad teaching, all this potential of students shrivels in the face of it. With great teaching, all this stuff starts to flourish and to flower. And that, to me, is the great gift of teaching, you know, to recognize that growth is possible at any time. Like in Death Valley, in the most deathless place on earth, there's life there if you know what the conditions are. And the great challenge for teaching, I think, is not just to know your discipline, but to know your students and to know what the pedagogical relationship is that will make them flourish and become the best thing they can be. And I think that it's not just something for the young, and increasingly it's something that we should see as intergenerational rather than just something that happens at the beginning of our lives. It should endure throughout the whole of it. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, Sir Ken Robinson.
Thank you. Thank you.